Speaker. Look, I would say to the Prime Minister as he's leaving the chamber, well, what about private vet training? Why is he not making private vet training free? If he's that concerned about vet training, make that free as well, Prime Minister. Rather than just choosing free TAFE, make vet private training free as well. Free as well. And the reality is that myself, as one of 151 members in this House, is probably more qualified to talk about TAFE than anyone else here. And that's because I've completed 4 courses through TAFE, from Certificate 1, Certificate 2, Certificate 3 and diploma levels, all through TAFE I've completed. I wouldn't suspect any other members have. I don't support free TAFE. I think it is a bad policy, and I think what we're getting here from the Prime Minister and those people opposite is that they're choosing one sector of vet training, a sector that they think benefits them because of union membership. That's the reality, Mr Speaker. And as I said before, my experience with TAFE doing, when I first left school, a certificate in hospitality and training, back when silver service, I paid for TAFE, by the way, to the Assistant Minister walking out the door. I actually paid for it, no problem at all. And I didn't come from a wealthy family or anything like that. My father, in fact, only finished school and went to grade 5, finished school when he was 10, but went on to own his first home in his 20s. And so, to those opposite, I think I am qualified to talk about TAFE. Generally, my experience was good there, and I've got no problem with TAFE. But what I have a problem with is a government picking and choosing winners and giving financial outcomes because of their union membership, because TAFE is purely within the public sector and tends to have more union membership. And to the minister opposite, who's seen a 14% reduction in manufacturing, I don't know who the hell you think you are to talk and want to interject.
Order.
14% reduction.
This is not a two-way conversation.
Yeah. Well, get on to him then. I'll wait for your order.
Order. The Minister. The member for McEwen. The member for Petrie is entitled to be heard in silence. Please. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. So I'll get back to my experience. I did the hospitality training back when silver service was, I think for those people that might have went to restaurants back in the late 80s, early 90s, it was a big thing. I did training at the TAFE in my electorate, Bracken Ridge North Point TAFE, which is still operating today within the electorate of Petrie. That's where I did my first training before I went on to a career in sales and so forth. I then did a diploma of business through TAFE because I always wanted to run my own business like my father, and so I did that diploma of business up at Caboolture TAFE, which no longer exists. It's out of my electorate. It's in Longman. I'm not sure what is there now. It was part of the North Point training, and then I also finished it down in Bracken Ridge. I do want to thank those lecturers that gave me that training. It was good. And then after a successful career in wholesale sales, I went in to run my own business in the pest control industry, and then I went to do a Certificate 3 at TAFE there as well. So I've had quite a bit of training within the TAFE system. And I do want to give a shout-out to the Redcliffe TAFE and the Bracken Ridge TAFE within the electorate of Petrie and for the work that those trainers do there. I also want to give a shout-out to the Australian Trade College, North Brisbane, which has remarkable trade training at Scarborough within my electorate. It's one of the few trade training colleges where you can go to school in grade 10, 11 and 12 and actually do an apprenticeship while you're actually training, and they're getting some fantastic outcomes. The former Prime Minister visited that TAFE, the Trade Training Centre before the last election and gave it some recognition which it rightly deserves. But Labor have been on the Save TAFE and Free TAFE bandwagon for the best part of 20 years. And as I said the other day, when I'm dead and buried in 100 years, I'll still be talking about saving TAFE, free TAFE, saving Medicare. This is their parrot lines that they roll out every election. And let me give you an example. The former Labor member that I defeated in 2013, Yvette Darth, slid into the state parliament at a by-election, and in 2015 went into that state election as a member for Redcliffe and said, "We've got to save TAFE. We've got to save TAFE. We're saving TAFE. And that's what she went into that election on. 2 years later, in 2017, she said, good news, the Palaszczuk government has saved TAFE. We've saved it. It's completely saved in Redcliffe. But then at the 2019 federal election, Corinne Mulholland was the candidate that ran against me, who's now sliding into the Senate ticket, I believe, and she came out and says, we've got to save TAFE. Can you believe the rhetoric of the Labor Party? You get it. The member behind me gets it. So we've got a state MP in Redcliffe, entirely within the federal seat of Petrie, that was a former federal member for Petrie, saying we've got to save TAFE in 2015. 2017, we've completely saved it. It's brilliant. Thank you to the Palaszczuk government. And then a Labor candidate in 2019 that had a 7% swing against her at that election. We must save TAFE, and only Bill Shorten and that will be able to do it. This is the hypocrisy of the Labor Party. Now, if they were that serious about saving TAFE and making it free, what have they done in the last 3 years? We've seen a massive skills shortage. The reality is that more trade training and funding for apprenticeships was done in the last government than ever before. We had an entire scheme under the former coalition government called Boosting Apprenticeships, where we actually paid for the wages of half the wages of every builder, plumber, carpenter in the country. That's the reality. And at the moment, it's clear that we are in a cost of living crisis. It's clear that we don't have enough tradies due to the 600,000 migrants that this government is bringing in a year. So this picking and choosing is the big problem that we have with this government, that because TAFE is somehow in the public sector and has unionised jobs, that their donors say, well, look, you must support the public sector, you must support free TAFE. And the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party is right in the sense that having something free doesn't mean you value it more. The reality is that people line up to go to university. If you look at UQ in Brisbane or QUT in Brisbane or even the USC in the Leader of the Opposition seat, you do pay to go to university. The government pays part of it, 80% or so, roughly, depending on the course, might be 40, 60%, and then the rest is HECS. There's no reason why TAFE, which is generally a cheaper course because it goes anywhere from 6 months, 12 months to a maximum 2 years, couldn't have a small co-contribution like HECS. And if they were serious about giving everything for free, they'd make the private sector free for vet as well. Those are the facts. Now, the reality is too is that as Assistant Minister in the previous government for Youth and Employment, the governments previously were spending about 80% of the training on vet on TAFE, but they were only getting 20% of the outcomes. And the private sector was getting 20% of federal funding and delivering 80% of the outcomes. We've now heard that under the Albanese Labor government, that under their free TAFE completions, do you know how many people are completing the courses? And this is the Deputy Leader's right when people say if it's free, they don't value it. They've got a 13% completion rate. 13% for free TAFE. Now and the ministers get up opposite and say, oh, well, we need a bit longer, another 12 months to see if it improves. Well, let's say we triple it, right, to 39%. You still think that's acceptable with the amount of money? So the reality is that this plan from Labor is a shambles like most of what they've delivered over the last term of government. And that's why the coalition thinks money in the vet sector, we believe the vet sector is very important. I'm a product of it. Very important. We encourage people to get into carpentry and building and plumbing and electrical and other trades, whether it's hairdressing, whatever it might be. We think that is very important, and we will continue to make sure that vet is funded well, but we're not going to give all of the money to free TAFE. We'll also make sure that the private sector vet funding receives funding as well, and that's very important. And the government has a problem with anything to do with the private sector because it's not just TAFE and those private vet providers. If you look at the Leader of the House, when he was in charge of workplace relations, one of the things he did was destroy NESM, the new employment service model, for people wanting to help train people on the dole or on job seeker, as it's called. and that industry is completely struggling. He took away all the mutual obligations of people on Job Seeker to actually go and get some training and to enrol in different courses. He took away all that. So the government and many opposite have an ideologically opposed position to the private sector. That is what we're seeing here, and that is why we are opposed to it when 80% of the jobs are in the private sector. And whilst a lot of those trainers are very good, I have heard from builders and carpenters that some of the students that just come out of VET or out of TAFE don't actually have good training. Not at every TAFE, but at some of them, and that at the private sector training, which pretty well this government will give very, very little to, often has better training. So, like most of the government's policies, this only sounds good, but the devil is in the detail. $1.5 billion of your money and people in my electorate, $1.5 billion of taxpayers' money for a 13% completion rate through TAFE, a significant decrease in a number of apprenticeships and no increase. This is important. The Prime Minister talks about a skills shortage. No increase in total VET enrolments. How's that going to help the country? So they're doing free TAFE, absolutely ripping the guts out of the private VET sector, and there's no increase in total VET enrolments. This is an election ploy from a desperate government that has Australians in a cost of living crisis with rents through the roof, mortgages through the roof, electricity prices up by 50% and doubled for most businesses. Australians deserve choice, and free TAFE denies everyday Australians of choice. When a student chooses a university degree, they also get to choose the university that suits them. Maybe they make a choice because of the lecturers, reputation of the uni or location, but the important thing is that they have a choice. Free TAFE has robbed tens of thousands of Australians of that choice. The Albanese government has created significant social disadvantage and entrenched marginalisation with free TAFE. Not everyone has easy access to a TAFE college, and many regional towns don't have a TAFE college at all. Free TAFE makes cost of living and housing affordability worse. Free TAFE means fewer apprentices, fewer houses, more expensive trade services due to lower supply of qualified tradespeople. The two largest costs when building are the wages to the workers and the materials. When we don't train enough apprentices because this government ideologically opposes VET training in the private sector, the cost of available workers goes up, putting upward pressure on prices. The Albanese government has presided over the collapse of the Skills and Training College, not the former coalition government. As I said before, we had half the wages paid for every apprenticeship in the country. It's their government that has a 13% completion rate. This destruction of the skills pipeline will only get worse year on year on year on year without diversifying and resourcing the skills supply system across the board. When we don't train enough apprentices in any given year, we have to train double the following year to make up the shortfall and to build the numbers required in the following year. The problem with free TAFE is, unlike private RTOs, who are paid only on completion, so private sector VET are paid only on completion, TAFE are paid regardless of whether they produce an outcome or not. That's how they want to spend your money. So this money we need this year to catch up is already spent. This delivers very poor value for Australia. Mr Speaker, this is a bad policy from a bad government, and the coalition won't be supporting it.